So last week, we spent 2 days on activity 2.2. You folks had read a compare and contrast essay of Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant one day, and the following day you chose to either work with the feature-by-feature organization strategy or subject-by-subject, and you took that original essay of Grant and Lee and you rewrote it using one of those two organizational structures. So keeping that in mind, for activity 2.2 on your purple bookmark, how exactly was reading and writing that compare-contrast structure preparing you to write an expository essay that's going to either discuss the dystopian society of Fahrenheit 451 or how your protagonist, Guy Montag, had that hero's journey. All right, go ahead and answer that on that purple bookmark, please. Once you're done answering that, you can go ahead and flip your bookmark to the back. You need to catalog how activity 2.2 really prepared you for the concepts that your essay is going to be graded on. So with the class bookmark on this east wall, 2.2 had you practice the first two concepts of your essay regarding utilizing a proper thesis, enhancing your work with specific details, ideas. And it also helped you practice concepts 5 and 6. So you were working with the idea of a specific organizational structure. A lot of you chose subject by subject. And also looking at different types of transitions. And you folks really closely looked at page 99, transitions to use the compare and contrast structure. So once you've got that cataloged on the bookmark, you can go ahead and open up your Screenboard to page 100. And if you've got a highlighter, you'll want to use it. You only need one color today. And because we have a new activity, we've got ULIS. Yep, we have a few book learning targets, so go ahead and start there. Now with the 3 learning targets, we're really only focusing on the first and the third today. The second one is going to be more for tomorrow. So today's focus is you being able to explain utopia versus dystopia, as well as the idea of closely reading and analyzing character and theme. All right, now to the left of page 100, you folks have that academic vocab box. I want you to go ahead and highlight the information that you see popping up on the screen. Now, the term utopia, you should already have in your raw notebook when you copied down the vocabulary. This one's got a little bit more info than what I initially had you copy earlier. The idea of a utopia is that it could be a real place. Generally, it's imagined, and it's considered ideal or perfect. The people of a utopia, or the citizens, they're civilized, they are peaceful, fulfilled, and happy. And the idea of fulfillment means they want for nothing. They have everything that they could possibly need. Okay, now right below those learning targets, you folks have this huge chunk of text regarding where utopia actually came from, the terminology, the idea behind it. But instead of having you read it, I'm just going to have you highlight the key ideas that pop up on the screen. So this before reading section, there's 3 separate chunks. So in the first chunk, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and highlight this. The idea of the term where it originated. Utopia comes from 2 lines of thought. First, the idea of the Garden of Eden in the Old Testament of the Bible, and secondly, the Golden Age of Greek mythology. These 2 somewhat locations, societies, helped develop the idea of utopia. But in the second chunk of information, the actual term utopia, it wasn't coined until Sir Thomas More wrote his book titled Utopia. And in 1516, he talks about Utopia, this imaginary island, having a perfect society and a perfect social system. And in the last chunk of text, there's one more discussion of what a utopian community has within it, and I'm going to have you highlight that as well. The idea behind most utopian communities is that all of the citizens are committed to three basic ideas: that there is simplicity in their society, that there is sincerity in everything that they do, and the concept of brotherly love. Does anyone have an idea of what brotherly love means? It's fine if you don't. Brotherly love is just a fancy term. Love thy neighbor. Everybody enjoys each other's company. There's no animosity. There's no anger there. That's it. All right, now below that we've got some questions that we need to answer regarding your personal thoughts of utopia. So, Victoria, could you read number 1 on page 100?
Think about your own utopian society or community. If you had to define a set of values that would be found in such a society, what are 3 you think would be most important? Compare responses and look for
consensus. You got it. All right, now let's go on number 1. Go ahead and write the numbers 1, 2, and 3, just like you see on the screen. And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and talk this out with a partner or with your entire family. I want you to kind of take a minute and a half. What exactly would you believe are the 3 guidelines of a perfect community? Now, it's okay if you can't come to a consensus and you folks have your own ideas, but just discuss it for a bit before you actually write down what are the 3 items that you think every perfect society should incorporate. All right, go ahead. Okay, now in your families, just a hand up in the air is all I need. Were there any ideas that you and your entire family or you and a partner were spot on with that you felt, yeah, this is totally what we need? Did any of you feel that way? Okay, so we've got a lot of folks that actually think differently from one another. That's interesting. All right, no big deal. Nothing to worry about. We're going to go ahead and move on to step 2. And again, we're still really just discussing the idea of utopia. So, Logan, could you read number 2 for us?
Okay. The word utopia creates a paradox consisting of 2 opposites. Oh, and it's mixing of 2 opposite meanings. No place and also good place. Write a short paragraph that tells how both meanings of utopia must be should.
So you're not writing a short paragraph. I promise you that. You're not going to go that in depth, okay? So instead, what I'm going to have you do for now is copy that sentence frame. Now, the word utopia does have 2 different meanings. If you were to look it up in the dictionary, you would find both of them there. Utopia does mean no place, not existent. But it also means good place, perfect place. So instead of you writing a short paragraph, I'm just going to have you complete that sentence frame. So utopia can mean no place and good place at the same time. Because? And what would be your 2 reasons to support that? Think about a minute, the best that you can. Don't freak out if you get stuck. You're just trying to wrap your head around this idea of utopia. All right, so we've taken some time kind of wrapping our thoughts regarding utopia. What the heck does it mean? What does it personally look like to each one of us? So I wanted to take a look at the top of page 101, and you're going to see the academic vocab box for utopia's partner, dystopia. And what I'm going to ask you to do there is I want you to go ahead and copy the markings that you see on the screen regarding what a dystopia is. Now, a dystopia is very much fictionalized because it's extremely exaggerated. Okay, we could say that any single community is somewhat a dystopia because there are problems within it. But the word dystopia is for that extreme exaggeration of a place that would be considered frightening or unbelievably undesirable. Okay? So what we've got here is one question regarding dystopia. So, Owen, could you do number 3 for us?
When the idea of a utopia was created, its opposite, the idea of a dystopia, was also created. It is the opposite of a utopia. Such societies appear in many works of fiction, particularly in stories set in a speculative future. Why would the idea of a utopia lead to the creation of a dystopia?
All right, and here I'm going to give you another sentence frame. It's on the screen right now. So in what we read, it's believed that once utopia was made, dystopia was the offshoot of it. So dystopia was born because of utopia. Right? The only way that dystopia showed up or happened was because a utopia was in play. So the frame I'm going to ask you to finish up, how can a utopia lead to the creation of the dystopia? So how could something so perfect and ideal actually turn into something undesirable and frightening? What would be reasons behind that? Right, now, the short story that you're going to be reading today, called Harrison Bergeron, it has to do with this final question, how a utopia is actually giving rise to a dystopia. So before we actually read, there's 3 things that you're going to want to look for. So 3 items that I'm going to ask you to highlight. First item I'm going to ask you to highlight, setting. And the second is going to be rules of the community. So while we're reading the story, anytime you see a reference to the setting, the community itself, highlight it. Anytime you see the rules of the community really becoming prevalent in the writing, write it. And the third item I'm going to ask you to find and highlight, whenever any type of conflict or problem shows up. Usually, utopias become dystopian because there are so many conflicts that pop up that things just start to turn helter-skelter and it becomes a problem. Now, before we get into the reading of Harrison Bergeron, I've got a video for you. A few years ago, a film company decided to take the short story and turn it into a film adaptation. So you're going to see one of its original trailers, but instead of titling the film Harrison Bergeron, they titled it something else. And you'll be able to see why they titled it that way when you read the story. All right? So let's go ahead and get that going.